This is Frank Islam, Chairman and CEO of FI Investment Group and your host of Washington Credit Review, where we interview leading voices from business and politics that impact you, the viewer. Today, our guest is Delegate Eric Luedtke. He represents district in Maryland, and he's a member of the House of Delegates in the state of Maryland. Welcome to our show.
Thank you for having me, Frank. I appreciate it.
And tell me about yourself. A, B, you're a teacher.
I am.
And then how did you get into being a legislator? And the third question I want to ask you, what district do you represent?
Sure. Well, I'll start with the last question. I represent District 14.
And where is that?
It's northern Montgomery County. We're a suburb of Washington, D.C.
Okay. I live in Montgomery County.
Oh, great.
In Potomac, Maryland.
Great. Well, we're the other side of the county.
That's what I thought.
But yeah, I am a teacher and a new delegate.
Teacher of what?
I teach social studies.
Social studies.
Yes. And, you know, when you get to the classroom, you realize pretty quickly, especially if you work with a population of students like I do, which is a population of students, a lot of them live in poverty. A lot of them are recent immigrants to the country, English language learners. They have serious needs that can't always be met in the classroom. And so I got involved in politics as a way to help them get the things they need aside from classroom instruction, you know, good health care, good housing, good job opportunities.
So it's a good launching pad for you.
Well, it's, you know, it's I see it as all part of one continuum of helping my students.
Very nice. So you got from a teacher to legislator.
Right.
And so tell me, you serve on the education subcommittee, which makes a lot of sense because of the fact that you're a teacher and because of the fact that you have the experience and knowledge in terms of education. Can you explain some of the biggest policy changes to education in Maryland? And my next question will be, what side of education policy would you like to see during the 2013 session?
Sure. Well, as a result of No Child Left Behind about a decade ago, there have been...
That was the President Bush initiatives.
Right, and there have been huge changes in education policy at all levels of government, from the federal level all the way down. And so a lot of the work we're doing at the state level right now in Maryland is trying to continue to push forward those reforms we've been implementing. These past couple of years, we've passed some major pieces of legislation. Maryland passed its own version of the DREAM Act to give the children of undocumented immigrants the opportunity to go to college. And we just this year passed a bill which will require, once it's fully implemented, all students in Maryland to attend school until they're age 18. We're trying to find new ways to deal with the dropout crisis that's plagued our schools, frankly.
What is the dropout rate in the K-12 education right now, high school?
Well, here's the problem. We don't quite know. There are a dozen different measures of
all kinds of statistics.
So. Exactly. And depending on which dropout rate you use, how you calculate it, you know, Maryland's either doing really well or really poorly. That's one of the things the federal government's been trying to do, is nail down exactly what is the dropout rate in every single state. As we're doing that, though, you know, we have a lot of things we need to do. The kids who drop out, in a lot of cases, are kids who are very troubled, who aren't having their needs met by the school system. And so the law we passed doesn't just increase the dropout age. The idea is that as we increase the dropout age, we put in place alternative routes to a degree. We put in place new interventions to make sure those kids are getting their needs met.
My question to you is, I know you're a teacher. You serve on the Education Committee and subcommittee of the... what can we do in terms of politicians, the business communities, the business leaders, to make education more affordable and accessible?
Well, that's if I had the answer for you right now, then I wouldn't just be a state legislator. I'd be higher up. But
let me say this thing. Our success as a nation is very much attributed to two things: higher education and our democracy.
Right. And frankly...
And if you look at some of the things that in America we have done with the GI Bill during the World War II, that put America to its new height.
Right.
So shed some light on it.
Sure. Well, with higher education, you know, what President Obama has been pushing for, which
no
is
question, he's done a great job. Yeah,
and student loans are really the key at this point. I mean, there's sort of a combination of things happening. One is we need to find new ways of providing higher education.
Right.
I think you look at a university in Maryland, like the University of Maryland University College, which is providing high-level higher education online.
Are you a graduate of University of Maryland?
I'm a graduate of University of Maryland College Park. I also have taken classes at University College, which is a completely different experience.
It is. You're absolutely right.
But it makes it more accessible for people. But the big issue we have to tackle is the cost of college.
Cost is too high.
Yes.
And there are a lot of people in our community that can't afford to send their kids to college.
Exactly.
So we got to make it affordable and accessible.
And there are a number of ways we can do that. I mean, one of the things we've learned over the past decade is that community colleges are no longer a place where it used to be that community colleges were almost looked down on.
Exactly. And I do not subscribe to the notion that every student needs to go to 5-year university degree. They should be able to attain the skills that the job workforce needs. And we got a shortage of skilled workforce. I'm writing a column on this thing next week in Huffington Post. I want to shift my gear a little bit to talk about from education to disabilities. I know you have been champion of that, and you're looking for some of the legislations in the upcoming legislative session to improve the quality of the life for people with a disability. It's very important to our nations. Tell me a little bit about that, and why did you get engaged or involved with the disabilities?
Well, I actually have a brother who has a mild developmental disability.
So you have some first-hand experience.
I do, and my wife's a special educator, so I hear about the issues from a lot of directions.
So you have a passion on that.
I do.
And you're committed.
I do. I'm absolutely passionate. And, at the same time that we're trying to make sure that the government does a better job providing services for people with disabilities, we need to recognize that a disability is not something to be pitied.
Yes.
That people with disabilities are people.
We should be able to exploit their fullest potential and develop their talents.
Exactly.
Regardless of who they are.
And what we're learning, I think, as we gain a better understanding of the origins of disabilities, is that many people with disabilities are able to perform at a high level, to participate in the economy at a high level, and it's just a question of getting them the training and supports they need.
So they could become a productive citizen of this nation.
Exactly.
I am so glad that you're working on something like this. It's very, very important to our nations. We're not exploiting their talent fully.
No.
Now, let's talk about a little bit about the accomplishment, the important piece of legislation you sponsored during the 2012 session that became the law. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, as a freshman legislator, I had a few bills that passed that were my own bills, most of which related to disabilities. For example, giving students with disabilities better access to community college courses in what are called life skills. These are basic skills for living, for getting around in the community. But a lot of my work focuses on bills that have been sponsored by others, but which I help shepherd through and make sure that they're written in such a way that they will do what the sponsor intended. So a good example is this dropout bill, where when we got the bill, all it said was we're going to increase the dropout age. And by the time that it left my subcommittee, we had amended it radically to not only increase the dropout age, but to ask the State Department of Education to go through a whole series of steps to make sure we get there. What we see a lot in education policy in particular is the soundbite solutions are what gets written into legislation, and we don't quite figure out how to get there, how to make that soundbite into reality. So, a good example, No Child Left Behind is a great line, and it sounds great on TV, but what does it mean, and how do we get there? That's the real day-to-day work that we do on the Education Subcommittee.
Now, you're a teacher. You're a legislator.
I am.
So in a sense, you're politicians.
Yes.
And politics define the landscape of our country and of our citizens. And it creates a common cause.
Yes.
And politics also unifies the people.
Yes.
Tell me, to our viewers over there who's listening to you, and you're so much passionate about the job that you do, and thank you for your leadership, what you do for our country and community. Why should people get involved in politics?
There is no more important act than to get involved in the government. It defines our lives, and the nature of a democracy is that our country is only as strong as the people who get involved with it. And without that day-to-day involvement of everyday people, the government doesn't function. It simply does not work.
And this is how you participate in a representative democracy that we have in America.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And obviously, I heard you say that the politics is a price framework for our nations to move forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we need to make sure that as I see it, and you said it very well, to be engaged in politics, be informed, so that your voices are heard.
Yeah.
You have a seat on the table.
Absolutely.
And that's how you participate in representative democracy.
Right. And that's, I mean, I teach social studies. This is what I teach. This is what I talk to my students about, and it's something that I believe passionately, and I believe it even more now that I've served in government, because you see the power of citizen participation. You see every year people get involved, and the big political fights, the controversial fights that we have in Annapolis, they are only successful. Big reforms are only successful when regular, everyday people get involved.
I totally agree with you. I want to shift a little bit from the education to disabilities to the politics about Maryland considering the gaming expansion. Tell me a little bit about that. What's this all about, and what do you think about all these things?
Sure. Well, in addition to the Education Subcommittee, I serve on the subcommittee that oversees...
Tell me a little bit about it.
It's been a little bit of a controversy. Maryland legalized gaming in 2008. And the question now is, do we expand it? There's sort of a race in the Mid-Atlantic between different states to see who can have the most competitive gaming as a way to help pay for state government, frankly, as the economy's done bad, as governments have retrenched because they don't have enough revenue. Gaming is really seen as an easy option to get money. And so where we're at in Maryland right now...
So just not the casino. Is it more than the casino we're
well,
talking about?
There's a lot. Maryland's a little behind the curve. Yeah, in Maryland we're still talking about casinos, but do we legalize table games? Delaware just became the first state to legalize online gaming, and a lot of other states are going to follow. New Jersey now is looking at legalizing sports betting, and so that'll be a question on the table. Maryland just put its lottery online, so you can buy lottery tickets online. The internet in particular is revolutionizing gaming, and because gaming is so highly regulated, we need to make sure that we're doing a good job rolling out new forms of gaming if we choose to do so.
Are we creating a population that's going to be addicted to the gaming and gambling?
That is the crux.
And casinos?
Yeah.
Is that the kind of state of Maryland you want to show to the people in the world?
It's not something. I was opposed to gambling when it was
I know
legalized.
it creates a revenue.
Yeah, it creates revenue, and you're right. It also creates addiction. It creates all sorts of social problems. But the reality is, in Maryland, it went on the ballot, and the voters in every county in the state voted for it. And so the situation we are in the legislature is carrying out the will of the people and making sure that we regulate the gaming industry as thoroughly as possible to prevent corruption, to try to limit addiction, but also to make sure that the state gets what was promised when people voted for it, which was an alternate source of revenue, particularly for education.
So as you move forward for the next session, 2013, tell me what exactly you're going to be doing.
Sure. Well, my work is going to focus a lot on education, of course, and in particular secondary education. I'm going to be introducing a pair of bills related to student loans. In Maryland, this is bizarre, but in Maryland right now, if somebody cannot pay their student loans and the loans are forgiven, they're taxed on that forgiven debt.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't make sense. So we're going to try to fix that, and then also I'll have a bill.
So it's a state tax. It's not a federal tax.
It's a state tax.
Okay.
It's a state tax. And then I'll also have a bill that will require the universities to do a better job counseling students on what types of loans are available, so that they know that it's better for them to take the low-interest federal loans than it is to take high-interest private loans, and just make sure that students at the universities are fully educated about their options.
Okay, so you give them an options.
Right.
So those are kind of things you're going to be working on the next legislative session, which is 2013.
There are always issues that come up. There are always issues that surprise us, and to some extent it's going to be dictated by what's coming through my committee. But my focus right now is student loans, it's college education. I think we need to get a grip on college affordability, as you said, and that's really going to be my aim this session.
Well, that's a lot of things you have on your plate, yes. And I'm glad that you're providing the leadership to make Maryland a better place to go to school, to live, mm-hmm. and a better community environment, which we need. So Thank you very much for your work, and thank you for coming to our show.
Thank you for having me.
I really greatly appreciated you coming.